I read mine last week, so I must have read yours.
All right, I'll call this meeting the Brown County Commission order. We'll start with the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. First on the agenda, we've got Rod Tobin to discuss CAFO ordinance proposal. Good morning, Rod. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you, Rachel. I'm fine. I have some information I'd like to hand the commissioners this morning. And then I appreciate the opportunity to kind of go through it with each of you. You two here, you've probably already seen it.
Yes. Thank you much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we want to pull out some chairs? You guys can come on in. There's room right along the wall here, and we'll grab a few chairs in the closet here.
You need a chair?
Everybody got their handout from Rod?
The very first page of the packet I gave you is some research I did. What I want to talk with you about today is, I think, an issue that's come to light as a result of some research I've done on behalf of a client of mine. And I think we all know probably who that is. But I want to focus in my initial conversation on what I think the ordinance, as they currently sit, the impact they have on all Brown County residents. Chairperson Kip and I have talked about how you don't want to create zoning changes for one particular person, and I agree with her, but I think one particular case can lead to the identification of an issue that affects a vast number of people, and that's what I think has happened here. So if you permit me, there's a lot of data on this initial chart that I've showed you. The top group of information is, well, let me back up. What I did is I looked at, we're talking about county, particular, very small, what are defined as, in the county would be defined as a very small operation. Those of 300 animal units and less. And in your ordinance, you have a definition of what constitutes an animal unit. A simple way to think about it is one cow is one animal unit. A half a horse is an animal unit. A 0.4 of a pig is an animal unit. And I know it's a little confusing because you can't cut a horse in half, but that's what the rules say. I started looking around to see, because right now, jump to the bottom of that page first of all. You'll see Brown County's current ordinances for the setback from residential dwellings. Brown County lists a number of different setback requirements, whether it's a governmental entity, a church, a school, but also lists an individual house. And so this is what I focused on. So the current Brown County ordinance requires a half a mile setback from B to E. So what that means is, if you have one turkey that constitutes being in a CAFO, confined according to the definition, it's the same setback requirement as if you have 100,000 turkeys. It's the same setback if you have one cow or 1,999 cows. It's the same setback if you have one pig or 5,000 pigs, because of how our setback ordinances in Brown County are currently structured. Class B is a half mile setback. Class C, so a chicken counts as 1/10 of an animal unit. Essentially, our ordinances regulate one chicken if it meets the definition of a CAFO, right? Confined to a yard for at least 180 days a year, no vegetative growth. Learning this, I decided to look around and see what other counties have done. Well, the counties surrounding Brown County have essentially adopted Brown County's ordinances identically. So there's really no variation in the surrounding counties. So then you don't learn much from other counties that essentially have copied what you already do. So then I looked to the other populated counties in eastern South Dakota. And so I evaluated the 10 most populated counties, and they're listed again back at the Beetle, Brookings, Coddington, Davison, Hughes, Lincoln, Minnehaha, Union, and Yankton, to see what other populated counties were doing with their setbacks. It was complicated because the counties break things down differently, and that's the headings at the top. So, for instance, Union and Davidson go by large. Coddington goes by class 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The majority of the counties do what we do, which is by class A, B, C, D, and E, although not every county has a class E, and the classifications are different. So I tried to take then the data from each of these counties and force it into these brackets or classes, either based upon what they had done themselves or based on, for instance, in Union and Davidson, I had to take what they determined to be a small CAFO and then try to make it fit within the classifications. It's a less than perfect way of doing it because every county looks a little differently. That Brown County has established in their ordinances. So 50 animal units, and then 300 animal units, and 1,000 and 2,000. And I looked at the setback that each of these counties has established based upon this number of animal units. And so if you look at the far right-hand side, if you have 50 animal units in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the counties, there is no setback requirement. In 3 of the counties, there's a quarter-mile setback requirement. And at the bottom, then I just average. Now, the average, in some cases, doesn't make a lot of sense. In some cases, it does, because when you have 3 at a quarter mile and 6 at 0, then the average doesn't really. Counties still do not regulate 300 animal units. But then the average starts to make a little more sense. Of course, on the high end, you have Hughes and Union that have half-mile setback for 300 animal units, but then the rest of the counties are something less than that. And when you average those out, it turns out to be about 1,200 feet. 1,000 animal units is more consistent. The average equals out about a half a mile, and 2,000 animal units, the same thing, averages out about 3/4 of a mile. So now back to the colors. So up above the colors is the grouping by, I had to pick colors that I could tell the difference of. But for instance, the far right-hand column, class 5, shows a color for 300 to 999 animal units at 1,300 feet. If you follow that color through the rest of the chart, you will see that's generally the same or approximately the same number of animal units. It just shows you the variation that how counties classify that. So in Yankton, that's a class 5, but in Beetle, it's a class B. So the color just helps you by county figure out what they've done by distance. And of course, the blues and that, I don't know, that dark gray is for the very large CAFOs and those setbacks. So what does all this mean? So the third set of data, which is just setback by animal unit grouping. So I essentially took the middle graph chart and distilled it down to grouping. And I looked at, and again, I had to be a little bit subjective. I had to pick the groupings based upon kind of how the counties themselves had broken it down. But if on the far right-hand side in the yellow, I said if you looked at approximately 50 animal units to 400 animal units, the average setback for 9 counties is about 1,100 feet. 1,000 units to 999, the setback is about 1,500 feet. If you look at 1,000 to 1,999, the setback is about a half mile, 2,420 feet. And 2,000 to 4,999, the setback is about 3/4 of a mile. And then when you get above 5,000 animal units, the distances get considerably larger. So this is a breakdown of the 9 counties' data. Of course, I excluded Brown County because we're trying to evaluate for comparison to Brown County. So it's the other 9 most populated counties in eastern South Dakota. And what this shows is the average setback for those 9 most populated counties based upon a grouping of animal units. So the last thing is what I'm proposing. And I'll go through as to why this is beneficial to Brown County. But my proposed Brown County setback is what's listed next. So I've left the 5 classes in place. But I said for our very smallest animal unit numbers, 0 to 49, Brown County doesn't really need a setback in my opinion. And I think that's supported by the data from the other large counties in eastern South Dakota. As we go up, it seems to make more sense that we regulate by number of 200 animal units. It seems fair to me that you should increase that setback. The smaller number of animal units you have, when you start increasing the number, it has a graded percentage change. So if you go to 50 to 100, that's doubling. But if you go from 1,050, or if you go from 1,000 to 1,050, that's 5%. So the difference in animal units is much more, it's much bigger impact in smaller numbers when you go up even just a few units. And so that's why I created, as many counties do, an actual gradual setback increase. So at 50 animal units, the setback would be 200 feet, but for every additional 50 animal units, it increases by 200 feet. And therefore, we create a bigger separation based on the number of animal units. Of course, when we get up to Class C, it becomes more standardized because now you're getting into larger numbers, which are more feedlot-based type numbers, and the same for essentially Class B and A, which I don't know that Brown County is an anomaly regarding those. So why am I here? Why do I care about this? Well, I care about it because I do represent a client that is impacted by this right now. And it just struck me as very unusual in doing this research when I learned that if you have one pig, you have to have the same setbacks as if you have 5,000 feeder pigs in Brown County. That to me doesn't make a lot of sense. In this case, it works a huge inequity. The next set of information in your packet is a little bit about what my client does. And it's Wolf Family Genetics. They're a very small genetic pig operation. They don't raise pigs for meat, they raise pigs for show. And they sell these pigs in 14 counties in South Dakota, 7 states, and their pigs have won over 40 awards in the last 2 years. So to indicate that this is not just some small meat operation where they're raising pigs for slaughter for the neighbors, this is a genetic, value-added agricultural business. But what's happened with the Brown County ordinances is they've essentially been excluded from doing their value-added agricultural operation because of the setbacks involved to meet the current Brown County ordinances. Right now, my client has, under the Brown County ordinances, what would be classified as 26 animal units. Again, that would be akin to having 13 cow-calf pairs or 13 horses. It's just a very small number of animals. And again, if they wanted to have a 5,000 head feeder operation, they would have the same setback requirement, but that's not what they're trying to do. And as a result, they are excluded. The ordinances require then, if they can't meet the setback, they have to get approval from the neighbors or seek a variance. Well, pigs tend to be an emotional issue, believe it or not, even if you're trying to convince someone that they are a show animal and not a feed animal. And we're talking about a very small number of animals, not a large feeding operation of animals. Make no differentiation based on animal type. If you look at it, your ordinances say that they've been adopted to provide protection against pollution caused by manure from domesticated animals. It doesn't say from pigs or cows or horses or sheep. They're supposed to all be treated the same. But yet, when it comes to pigs, we seem to have a discriminatory effect about the manure odor from pigs versus other animals. Animal units of pigs seem to create a bigger fear in people than 13 horses as far as the odor emanations. A half mile is a huge distance for such a small. If you step out of your yard or step out of the courthouse right now, I don't know that you can smell Scotty's on any given day, but maybe you can on one day. That's a little over half a mile. These ordinances are put into effect, and they're stated so as to prevent nuisance. But it's not all nuisance. It's reasonable nuisance. I live north of the Brown County Fairgrounds. If we have a south wind on a Friday night, guess what I get to listen to all night? I get to listen to the stock car races. Okay, is that fair to me? Is that a nuisance? Absolutely it is. But is it acceptable nuisance? Is it a nuisance that several thousand Brown County residents get to enjoy every Friday night? Absolutely it is. Does Brown County say you can't have races because you may cause a nuisance to 1 or 2 or 33 people in the Rolling Meadows subdivision? No, they don't. And we have a similar situation here. We have one neighboring landowner that is inside of the setback requirement for Brown County right now of a half a mile that has not signed a waiver. As a result, my client is not being allowed to do their value-added ag operation. So we went to the variance board to try and get a variance, and we were denied based upon the current zoning ordinances that Brown County has. So that's why I'm here today, to talk about the ordinances themselves and the injustice they work. Not just for my client, but if you drive around Brown County, it doesn't take you very long to find other operations which probably would be in violation of the current CAFO setback rules. Now, we have asked your zoning officer for a list of all the small operation permits that have been issued and have been not given that. Said it's too difficult to obtain that information. And I respect that. Scott's a busy guy, but at some point in time, I guess we may, need to pursue that formally to see if there are any permitted operations of this size in Brown County. I don't know of any. I haven't been able to find any. But I'd rather deal with what seems to be almost a silly requirement of the setback for such a small number of units, and even ask, why does Brown County regulate such small numbers? Why do you go down to zero? How do you regulate 0 animal units? I mean, so while that's picking a nit as far as 0 to whatever your initial classification is, 0 to 300, why are we concerned with 1 or 2 or 3 animals in this county where we know we've approved large CAFOs? My practice background is I've worked with some very large producers that do spare to finish operations. There you're dealing 4,000 or 5,000 animal units at a time. There, the concerns are genuine and real as far as odor control and fly control and manure management plans. But in this, talking about a very, very small operation that's really about trying to find value in agriculture in a way that has very little impact, certainly not going to impact people a half mile away on more than a rare or very occasional basis, if at all. And again, I'm not going to say that they don't smell something, because that's not my role. They can tell you what they smell or don't smell. But what I will tell you is the science and the data will tell you that if there is detection of an odor from such a small operation, it would be on an extremely rare basis.
Okay. So did you say you had, of the neighbors, only one that hasn't signed off now?
We have, well, I haven't checked recently. I know we had 2 of the 3 across the streets. The neighbor to the south is the one who has not signed. One of the neighbors to the, so we don't have that yet. We would accept the county's obligation, obviously, to say, well, that is clearly within even my proposal. We would have to get that person's agreement, otherwise. But I'm not talking necessarily, Rachel, just about this situation. I'm talking about the ordinances in general. Why does Brown County...
I thought you had said you had all the signatures but one.
That was my understanding, but don't hold me to that because I don't have it with me, and I didn't know if Jeff... Okay, so we may have, not 2.
Gotcha.
Okay. But this is really about the ordinance and how it affects all of Brown County residents. Okay, it does impact my client, but it affects everybody because of the requirement right now for 0 to 1,999 animal units. Just to finish what's in the packet, the next is a detailed breakdown of what my client has for animals and what they were trying to go to. And I say he has 26, I lied. He's got 21.24 animal units right now, so it's my bad. He was trying to go to 133 animal units, which is still very small. There are some letters of support that are included in your packet. And last but not least, I wanted to just really touch on briefly the Ag Preservation District, which is where my client is located. I called Scott Bader yesterday and I asked him where we're zoned. And he said you'd be zoned in the Ag Preservation District. So I pulled those ordinances out that deal with the AGP. One of the permitted uses in AGP is any form of agriculture, including raising crops, horticulture, and animal husbandry. So I printed 3 definitions of animal husbandry on Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com. Britannica says that animal husbandry is controlled cultivation, management, and production of domestic animals, including improvement of qualities considered desirable by humans by means of breeding. Animals are bred and raised for utility, sport, pleasure, and research. So I find it hard to understand why my client's operation isn't included as an animal husbandry operation instead of a concentrated animal feeding operation, because this section of ordinances does go on to claim that fit in with what agriculture may be developing into, which is smaller, more boutique type operations. Those of you that are farmers know that the economy is not great right now. Prices are not good. We've had a summer of drought. While my client is not a crop farmer, it wouldn't be hard to imagine that in some form of value added that would involve animals, while not having a large feedlot. Maybe a smaller operation, maybe a few cows, maybe 50 cow-calf pair. And all of a sudden now you got 100 animal units. Do we really want to have them, force them to be a half-mile setback? So, I am open for questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to lay out all this information.
Okay, any questions from the commissioners on the packet of information provided?
List the future operation if it were.
So if he has 60 sousy pigs out, and they roughly average 9-10 to a litter, that's 540 to 600 pigs, and you're going to use 160, which are genetically able to meet their qualifications for what he's selling. What happens to the other 400 pigs?
It depends upon when the genetic inadequacy is identified. If it's at the piglet stage, they're disposed of. If it's when they get larger, some anomalies aren't able to be detected until they're larger, so you can't weed them out until they're bigger.
So the balance of 400 may stay on the facility for what time frame?
I would say that there will not be a balance of 400 because there are a significant number that are called early in life. But the pigs will continue to stay on the operation until they are either...
The compliance at 133 then?
Well, it does by your ordinance, because based upon how large the pigs are and what the animal unit number is.
Yeah, but
so every pig over 55 pounds is 0.4 animal units, period.
So if these pigs stay on the place for 6 months, there's more pigs...
That's not how your ordinance reads. Your ordinance reads if you have a sow, if you have a feeder pig, if you want to call it that, if you have an animal over 55 pounds, that's what the rule is. So every 2.5 pigs counts 1 animal unit if they're over 55 pounds. If they're under 55 pounds, if they're a piglet, they count 0.1 animal units, only a tenth. So that's what the ordinance says, and quite honestly, that's what the state of South Dakota says too. That's how they count animal units.
How many acres are we talking about here?
Not very many. 12 acres.
I raised hogs for 40 years, and I'm going to have to argue with you about one thing.
Yeah.
I'd say a show hog and a bull-nosed pig, when they go, they smell the same.
I don't disagree with you, Tom. They do smell the same, but 21 animal units, which essentially is 30, 40 pigs, doesn't smell the same as 3,000 pigs or 2,000
No, that's
pigs.
true. Sure.
So how much are they going to weigh, Rod, when they sell the ones that aren't fit for show?
Some will weigh up to market weight, 250 pounds.
That's what I thought. And we've raised pigs before,
Yep.
and my kids show pigs. It doesn't take long for them to beat that 55-pound mark.
Understand that, but the ordinance says anything above 55 pounds is 0.4 animal units. Okay, so from 55 to if you can raise a 1,000-pound pig, it still counts as 0.4 animal units because it's based on manure production.
Okay. So you're going to have how many of these ready for sale? About how many were you thinking? 400?
Well, again, Jeff, explain a little bit more about how you sell your genetic stock.
Most of our pigs are marketed when they weigh from 45 to 65 pounds.
Okay.
Like right now, if we would have farrowed some in August, we would be probably in Texas this week with pigs.
If you have a litter of 10, say just a litter of 10,
Yeah.
just take it. About how many out of that litter
7
are
to
sold
8.
that are sold for I have 45 pounds?
Yep.
And that's your averages. That's by your books.
Yep.
So the non-genetic material is a very small percentage. I mean, as you can see by the awards, they've run a good breeding operation. They have a lot of satisfied customers that are repeat customers.
So if you have 400 of that, you're going to have a number of sows. Or they're going to be breeding how many times? How many times you can farrow them? Twice a year?
Two times a year.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions from commissioners? Well, I know our zoning board is looking at the ordinance because of this case and other things that have arisen, so it's probably not going to happen right now, just because tensions are a little high.
I understand.
Because of this particular case, but yeah, it's
But-
something that's been brought to their attention, and they
Sure.
are reviewing it.
I appreciate your time. Like I said, there's a lot of information. I didn't mean to overwhelm you or overload you. You all know where I work, and so if you want a more detailed explanation of this, I put a lot of time into it. It doesn't matter to you, but if you want a better understanding of it, I certainly have all of the ordinances for these counties in my office if you want to look at them as well. But
She spent a lot of time with this, right?
But to me, the real surprise to me is that in Brown County, it's the same setback for 0 to 1,999 animal units, and that's what I really wanted to bring to the attention of the county. So, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very
And
much.
I think our zoning board should do a good job of what, all the facts you've provided to them before, and I thank you.
I'll be happy to work with them as well, so thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Now, I know a number of people are here, and you may have thoughts you wanted to share. I would urge you to, well, if anybody wanted to take a minute to introduce yourself and say where you're at with this, or if you have an opinion on the matter, feel free to do that. Does anybody want to speak on this matter?
I'm Dave Nielsen. I'm the party that lives to the south of this facility. What happened to the 40-acre deal that people used to have in order to do this ag stuff? Whatever happened to the 40 acres? And if this was set up so it was a 40-acre deal, this wouldn't even be happening here. And I guess that's my thought. He brought all the information up about animal units. He never brought up acre size. So you could have a half an acre just big enough to put a building on and then go ahead and do something like this. What happened to the 40-acre amount?
Sure.
If I remember right, and I've been here a long time, I think the 40-acre thing applied to whether it qualified, you had to show 2/3 of your gross income came from farming for the assessor. I think that's where it came from, that 40 acres. And I think it got reduced down to 32 now. That's just a thought. I would check with the assessor and ask them
To
if that's what
get
they
your
thought.
house assessed at ag.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
My name's Hal Fadness. I live 1 mile south of the proposed site. They're talking about not having a half-mile separation. How close are you going to get to Mallard Pass then? How close are you going to get to other residences? I think a half-mile is a reasonable amount of territory.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, I appreciate everybody coming in today, and we will have our board be working on that. So thanks for the time and the information. We will go on to our next issue on the agenda, which would be 9 o'clock. We've got Judy Dosh, Maintenance, to discuss law book. Judy, are you with us? Somebody here's the law book. Get your seat back, yeah. Morning, Judy, how are you?
I was trying to get in.
Yeah, I know you are. I don't know why law books, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's kind of from one page to law book.
We're all excited about law books. Are you? What do we got going on?
Well, I would just pass my pictures around that I took. For the security grant, we're going to put the doorway in for...
Picture's worth 1,000 words, huh?
Yeah, we're going to put that doorway in eventually for the... These are the books that were going to be gone? Yes, for the court security up there that we were doing. Anyway... Share a picture.
Probably that some of the inmates probably like to buy them,
This
huh?
owner was out.
So anyway, Mike here, there's the 8th Decennial Digest and some South Dakota Codified Laws, Index, and Rules. We got some federal tax regulations and words and phases and phrases and some bankruptcy cases and the West Federal forms, and then there's the Martindale-Hubbell Law Directory. I'm waiting to get word on if we can also get rid of the 6th, the 7th, and the 10th Decennial Digest. My question to you guys is, this is probably, without the 6th, and 7th, and 10th, we're probably dealing with about 300 volumes. So what I need to know is, you guys are going to have to declare them surplus so that I can do something with them. Are you going to, what do you want me to do with them? Do you want to offer them to maybe to the Bar Association to see if there's any lawyers that would like to buy them just for the
These are all bankruptcy cases type thing?
No, there's about 30 books
These
there.
pictures also, you know,
Yeah, well, you might have
farmers might
that.
be needing them this year.
You might have that, that's that one, that's all there, yeah. Judy? Yes.
I think most of the lawyers probably use Westlaw. They don't buy the actual volumes because it becomes cost prohibitive. They might have a set of the code, but that's about it.
Yeah, and I was just wondering too if they wanted some of them just decorate their offices with some. But, doorstop?
Does a book from 1986 have any value at all?
Yeah, if it contains cases from 1986, then if you need to find one of those cases, you can go to that volume and there it is.
But that's probably on the internet also.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, it's all in Westlaw.
So you would need our, declare them surplus in order to dispose of
Yeah.
them in whatever way that...
Yep, and I will say that, 'cause, you know, I had some other books one time, and dependable, they've got the glue on them. They don't have no way to take the glue off, so I could recycle them. So it's basically, if we're not doing anything else with them, it's just if I'm hauling them just to the landfill, then... I move we declare them surplus.
Motion from Hanson?
Second.
Second from Feldheim, any questions? We're not still, are we still buying all these? I mean, we're gonna run into this every, how many years? Or is everybody on the internet now, we're not wasting money on these anymore?
That is something that you'll have to deal with, because I don't know who buys the books for the...
I remember we were told that once we started using whatever, that Westlaw or whatever, that there would be a computer available for anyone who didn't have it for the use, and we wouldn't be buying books. And it seems like every year I see in the budget books.
Yeah,
So maybe I should make a motion saying we stop.
The money is in the court's county budget, and the court is the one that owns the books. I've had a conversation with the court administrator in the past about, let's stop buying these
Yeah.
things, and they said, we'll talk to the judges, and then I've never heard anything back from that. But we need to stop buying them.
I think we probably should line item that out of the budget and
Put it towards security.
Yeah.
put it towards some kind of,
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to go ahead and surplus those books. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
That's the purpose of disposal, right?
And then you'll still see if there's somebody that would like to buy them, or if we donate it someplace.
That would be...
All right, anything else for us, Judy? Well, no, that's it, that's all I...
Thank
Well,
you.
that was easy. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I said you went from to...
Yeah, right. Next on the agenda, Sheila Anderson has got a tax issue. What do we got going on?
I'll just make a couple statements. I need 2 contracts declared in default. So here we go again, round and round. The first one is that lady that came in and asked for an extension. There's one for Gary. She asked for an extension, we gave it to her in January, and now she's defaulted again. And the second one, he lost his job. It's kind of a sad story, but he won't answer the phone and he won't come in, and so I think I gotta go to default on both of them and move to tax deed. Do you need a motion? Yeah, I'll move it.
Second.
Motion from Hanson, second from Sutton. Any questions?
If they just, the motion just mentions both the legal, that's all I need.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
That's on schedule, you want?
Getting there.
Sheila, do you want these? No, I don't need it.
Okay, next-
Top one will be back in,
They should be
yeah. Thank you, just better.
Next on the agenda, Derek Ritchie, Fair Manager, discuss potential revision changes to the clubhouse and grandstand ordinance. Derek, are you with us?
So all these people that come in, where were they on this? They never, none of them said anything.
Just the neighbors that have concern.
There's one guy that was a neighbor. That was illegal.
I gave him the option.
Yeah, I know it.
Crazy.
So, if people want us to change those ordinances, or don't they?
Oh, we need to, but I think it has to go through a proper procedure.
Morning, Rick.
Hey, Derek, how are you?
How you doing?
We're doing all right.
Busy day?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to, and looking over the ordinance as it relates to contracts, I noticed that there's a little bit of overlap with some of the proposals and some of the existing contracts, some in on the 15th, some in on the 30th. So I'd like to propose a change to the dates of the proposals when they're opened up, for 2 reasons. One, it's being submitted by the 15th, One of the contracts has an end date of the 30th, and one has an end date of the 15th, for them to remit their numbers to us. So it doesn't give us enough time, or the commission, to do due diligence on the performance of the individual outlets, whether it's the grandstand, or the clubhouse, or Centennial. It ends up putting it into crunch time, because then we have to get the information from the distributors. Sometimes we don't get them, in a timely fashion. So I'm proposing that there be some flexibility for you guys to establish the date based on when the contracts do come up, but put an absolute deadline of no later than the first Tuesday of December of that year, because then that would give us 30 days to collectively look at each of the proposals that come in and still assign the contract by year end. So Section A, under bullet point 6, would change that time frame from the current frame of October 15th to the absolute deadline of the first Tuesday of December, or earlier, if you guys decide you have the information you need to make that decision. The second one, on B, will dictate when that timeline will come into play. So that will give you the flexibility based on when you set the original deadline in A. You can set the deadline for opening proposals at that point. And then C, the 30-day timeline, which will give 30 days to inspect your proposals for you at the commission level, but then establish the absolute date of assignment by the end of the calendar year. The reason number 4 is separate on 3 is because if the group doesn't think it's relevant to make the change to bullet point 6, then bullet point 4 is irrelevant. But bullet point 4 states when that contract review period would be, and I'm just suggesting that the contract review period match up to the deadlines that you establish for the opening of the proposals. So that way everything is all linear, and it's not in conflict with some of the current contracts we have.
I want just a minute to read that.
Sure.
Well, we've already talked about we want consistency in all the contracts as far as dates. So that's something we've already discussed. So for the most part,
So you're taking out the specific time frame, and then we'll establish it after the fair.
Well, we
Here's the deadline.
give you the flexibility for both. We allow the flexibility for you guys to establish the timeline, but then if you don't, then it has an absolute timeline of the first Tuesday of December for the bullet point A, which will then drive all the rest of the dates. Because you might be ready October 1st on one year. Sometimes if you don't have the information, you might need till October 15th, which then, if you have the 2-week mandatory advertising period, would put you to November 1st. You know what I mean? So it gives you a little bit of flexibility based on when you're getting your information. But we didn't want to leave it too open-ended, because then there's no absolute, yeah.
Made sense when I read it through.
the second sentence in your proposed change, in B, the second sentence, is that necessary?
Which one? On which page?
The second sentence in your proposed change, number B, if the deadline is set for a Tuesday and prior to the start of the scheduled meeting, I don't know if that's necessary.
Yeah, it's like the little elaboration on what actually was being said.
You could strike that out, but basically that second sentence would give you the option, if you, let's say you said the deadline was Tuesday, let's say it was today, it'd be the opportunity if you wanted to keep it open for somebody to drop a proposal before the start of the meeting, but you could strike that out.
And we have that happen with highway. I mean, that's what we...
Typically, in a request for proposal or any contract, you set the deadline for
When you're going to
the
open.
time the commission is going to open,
If we're
read,
going
and
to
consider
open,
them.
we're going to open at 9 o'clock, that's what we said it before.
You can strike that
As long as
sentence.
it's here before 9 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah.
If you establish that in the proposal, then the second sentence would be...
I think we could delete that second
Yeah,
sentence,
agree.
quite honestly, as long as we set the
Yeah.
deadline.
Maybe I'll keep-
They know they're due at a certain time, they bring them in.
The rest of it I'm okay with, but that
9:30
sentence seems
Yep.
to be redundant.
Yeah.
Okay, we can strike that.
All right, any other questions?
What happens if, on bullet C,
Or...
you start the process late, And you're not going to have 30 days.
That's why I said within 30 days. So it can happen at any point within that 30-day category. The commission will
Whichever
will
comes
define-
first, you
Whichever
said.
comes first, yeah. The commission will define how they're going to handle that, so at any point within that 30 days or December 31st.
So in other words, if you have 60 days to play with,
Yep.
this says after 30 days, then you make a decision. If you have less than 30 days, then you have until the 31st of the year.
So like if you set the deadline date on November 1st, it would be 30 days or December 31st.
Any other questions? What do we have? Did you make a motion?
No, I did the other one.
Okay. Just want to make sure we didn't have
Well,
one.
I would suggest that you wait for the motion until you have the ordinance draft ready for advertising. Then you can authorize the advertising, and that starts the process for the ordinance change. We'd have to vote on it then.
So get it typed up and ready and deal with it next week or whenever we get the...
Right, I can help Derek with the ordinance form, or Larry can, or whatever.
Good plan.
Sounds good. We'll take that up next week then. Anything else from your world? I did have some questions from a group that's interested in putting in a proposal for this, and they had some clarification points, so I wonder if we can meet maybe a couple folks or get with Derek, and I'll give you those issues. It's kind of when we had met last week, just a working group. What's your afternoon look like?
Just have a appointment at 2:45.
Okay. Dwayne, is that something you'd be available for?
As long as it's before 4.
Do you guys want to meet at 1 o'clock, okay?
I'll be in line.
Yeah,
You want to just meet after the department?
that'd be great.
Okay.
And just one other observation, if this is approved, it doesn't affect any existing contracts.
Right.
Just so everybody out there is clear that when a contract expires, then this procedure kicks in for the next week. Sure.
Okay, so 1 o'clock on that here. And then, Derek, how are we doing on everything reconciling? I sent out an email yesterday, just wondering if we're good.
We are good. We received the check from Ken's that was forwarded over yesterday. So sales tax issues could be filed and then amended returns, but
Okay.
so
We
So the
have,
money is still sent in trust yet, in the treasury?
that would be a question for the treasurer. I'm not aware.
I think it
It's been
is still
moved
the
yet.
trust, they have to try and reconcile the month by month for the sales tax.
Is that what they were waiting for, is this check that was missing?
They've been given reports month by month, so the sales tax report in question for August should not have been in question because we have the information. The Department of Revenue requires that we pay sales tax based on what our reports show. Whether or not we actually receive the money, that's a completely different animal. So we do have the money, the numbers did reconcile, the credit card numbers matched exactly, so we know that the issue is not with show clicks, the issue is anytime you start taking reports out, manually manipulating them, and then trying to put them back together again. It's like you get a bookcase shipped to you, you take it apart, you don't know how to put it back together, and you're missing a screw, and trying to figure out what the screw does. It takes quite a bit longer. So if the reports are utilized out of the system as they are intended, these problems go away. So,
Well, if the reports don't say there were X amount of tickets sold at this price,
they do,
The re-
actually. We've had this discussion repeatedly, Max, and the reporting tells you exactly how many tickets are sold at each price point. That's the reason we knew
but
exactly.
it has to match the amount of money deposited.
Well, if we want to go down that road, technically, we instructed the carnival proceeds for the week of to be deposited into the carnival, which were then deposited into the treasurer's trust, which actually put them $15,000 long. So it took us 2 weeks to figure out why they were $15,000 long, which then led us to the understanding that they were $4,000 short, which then led us to the fact that the sales for the last day at the Ken's outlet were not remitted. So part of this is not just a reporting situation not matching, it's also a not depositing it as instructed. So
Wait a minute.
Yes,
All
go
that
ahead.
money came in an envelope with a letter on the outside that says, put this money in trust. Until we figure it out. That's right. We can dig out your
It was
instructions. That's
labeled
what
in
he
there
told
as
us to
carnival
do.
money on the line item.
Yeah, and it was, we were told on your reporting to put it there. And all we care is the money is in trust.
So
Tell
why-
us where you want it moved, into what
ticket line item. We don't have to fight about it. Just give us a final accounting saying, this is the money you move, put this in tickets, put this where you want it. If it's $500 short, if it's $700 long, just tell us how to empty that trust account and let our bookkeeping be done. That's all we're asking.
The emptying of the treasurer's trust has nothing to do with filing the sales tax report.
We're not, we're talking about getting the treasurer's trust. That money that's in treasurer's trust
Correct.
is money for ticket sales, and that gets applied to the sales.
Of creating the Excel spreadsheet where we take all the information out of the ShowClicks report, transfer it onto
We
the
do
nice
it every
color-coded-
month for credit cards the way you tell us.
So
We
then-
give us a report, we move the money accordingly.
And we give you the moving of the money and the paying of the sales tax are two separate issues. Your complaint is payment of sales
No,
tax.
I'm not complaining.
You
I
have the
said
money-
I let the money
Gary,
in
can you tell
treasurer's
her how
trust.
many dollars to transfer from treasurer's trust into each designated
And we
account?
need to empty that account and say, where do you want the money? That's all we want.
That's a yes or no, Derek?
Yes.
Can you?
Yes.
Then
Then
give it
you
to
will
her.
do it by
Work on it.
Friday,
Let's-
before
let's
June
that
has to
number.
go to, be on medical leave next week. We want that account emptied, because she's the one that's been working with it, so that it's $0 at the end. Move the money wherever you tell us is fine, but just give it to us.
So what is the purpose of the Excel sheet that we provide every month?
That's
for the
what
cash and
Larry instructed us, that's for our bookkeeping. It says, this is the dollars we put where, and we have a copy for the state auditors. If they look for that particular receipt, they pull any receipt at any given time, this is what it's for. You do your own internal accounting, but when you move money, every dollar has to come out of that fund for Max. That's in her money. She has to show why that's moved, where it's moved to. And we don't care. Everybody makes mistakes. Is it $300 short? Is it $800 long? It is what it is. That's the way it'll have to be taken care of into the booking, but just tell us.
So you were instructed to put the 20,000 into
You
the
bet
treasurer's
you
trust.
count.
That's probably where the whole thing started.
So
Don't
now they
blame
might
us.
need to be
Don't
told.
blame us.
I mean, and that was a cash deposit, so
Then you
that's
then you wrote an apology. I was not aware of that.
Okay, so you guys can work together and get that done
We
by the
want
end
it
of the
done
week?
by Friday, because she's leaving on extended leave. And it's difficult for all the rest of us to dig back into what she's done.
Yep.
You're just redoing what she's been doing.
Sounds like we can give you that
Well,
number
the
and
money's there,
we'll
it
be
just
good to
needs
go.
to be,
To move.
Be
And
called
is it
something.
short, is it long, we don't care.
What's sitting in the trust, approximately?
right now, there's, what, 220-some-thousand?
Okay, and once we get that done by the end of the week, will you send us a copy of it so we can look at it in the packet next Tuesday?
Good.
Sounds great, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thanks, Terry.
No? Have a
Have a great day. Brings us to the end of the regular agenda. Next on, we got Max's list.
Okay, minutes, September 26th.
Moved by Fishback, seconded by Hanson. Any questions or corrections of those minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries.
Claims payroll?
Second.
Moved by Feldheim, seconded by Sutton. Questions on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion
HR,
carries.
sorry, HR report?
Move.
Second.
Motion from Sutton, second from Hanson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries.
Set hearing date for, it's a joint ordinance with the city. It's ordinance number 17-10-2/470. This just sets the hearing and authorizes advertising, and they will come here.
Second. Moved by Fishback, seconded by Hanson. Any questions on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries.
Have we seen that ordinance?
It's in
It's in the
in the
packet.
packet.
Okay, that one.
It's a rezone, Myers rezone.
Okay.
There's a lease agreement for Terry Goldaid, and there is alcohol form attached.
Move.
Moved by Feldheim, seconded by Sutton. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries.
And fair contract.
Do they get paid before they sign the contract?
Evidently.
I did not see that voucher go through yet, but I thought it would.
Yeah.
$100 for the demo.
I don't care if it's 100 or 10,000. I mean, if you don't have a signed contract, how can we pay him?
Why are they doing the service if they
Yeah.
don't have a signed contract?
Right.
Move it.
Moved by Fishback,
Second.
seconded by
Go to
Sutton.
sleep.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries.
10,000, I'd be okay.
Thank you, Cal. 100 is just middle money to you.
No, that's big money to me.
That's all I have.
Okay. Gary, anything for us?
Sheriff's Department dropped off quotes were in need of a portable fingerprinting machine. They don't want to take citizens down to the jail to just take fingerprints like they need to. A lot of times they have two quotes here, one for $6,394, the other one for $7,423.24. They just wanted to let you know that acknowledge the budget expense. And
So where are they gonna take the fingerprint at then if they don't take them down to the jail?
they just do it right in their office.
In the office?
At the main window there?
At the main window, yeah.
And it's in their budget?
Yep.
They don't do the old ink thing anymore?
No, that's kind of gone by the wayside.
I remember
for
that.
the most
Fold
part.
up in the
I
little-
mean, they
Anybody wanna
still
see
do
the
that, but
quote?
Okay, they're going to, I'll need those for a minute. They're going to accept the
Are they
low
both in
one?
this one?
yes, the
Okay.
$6,394.
Okay.
And they don't need a motion, just a heads up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You need a motion.
Just acknowledgement of
You're
the budget
accepting quotes.
expense,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll move to accept the low bid.
By Sutton.
Second.
Second by Feldheim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And that's all I had, except for exec for contract and personnel.
Okay.
Move.
Moved by Feldheim to go into executive session for contract and personnel.
Second.
Second by Sutton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll be in exec session. Okay, we will be back out of exec session. Any motion?
I would make a motion to accept the resignation of the Director of Communications and request to fill the position.
Okay, we got a motion on the table.
Second.
Second by Fishback. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Anything else? while
This
we
goes
were-
on travel?
Yes.
Okay.
Was there anything else that came up while we were in?
I'm gonna put this on next week's,
Okay.
so it doesn't, because it's not until November 26th.
Sure.
Okay. Nothing from me.
Anything else from the commissioners in attendance today, or the folks here? Okay,
Department head meeting, 11 o'clock.
okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Get my
So
notes.
moved.
Moved by Sutton,
Second.
seconded by Feldheim, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
next week.
Motion carries.
Oh,
Today.
Who made the motion on